The following video was filmed before strict social distancing guidelines were in place. Peaceful Schools encourages everyone to follow the social distancing mandates and to stay safe.
Hi guys, welcome back. I'm here with Miss A. I'm Mrs. H, and today we're doing the Roaring 20s makeup. So this is a challenge for us to show you makeup from the Roaring 20s and what that might have been like. So Miss A is going to tell us all about the Roaring 20s and about the beauty standards from that era, and I'm going to go and tell you later about the beauty standards for African Americans during that time.
Okay guys, so the makeup of the 1920s is very, very iconic. There's no other decade that stands out quite as much as this. Ladies wore really dark, smoky eyes. They wore bright red lips, really blushy cheeks, and then they had painted on eyebrows. So it was really bold, and that's very, very different from the previous decade of 1910. 1910, you only wore light makeup, maybe a little bit of gold, and it's because the women of 1920s were breaking standards all across the board.
Yes.
So we'll have a lot more information for you guys, but we're going to get started and glue our eyebrows.
We have to glue our eyebrows down for the purpose of this video, and the reason that we're doing that is we want to hide our eyebrows as much as possible so we have space to draw another thin eyebrow, which is more representative of the 1920s. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, ladies in the 1920s actually just shaved off their eyebrows most of the time,
and we'll
so that they could just draw it on. But
yeah,
we'll
insert a picture of how it looks so you can see it too.
Okay, Miss H is going to start us off.
All right, I'm gluing our eyebrows.
Oh my god.
So the point of doing this is just to get it to stick down enough so that you can put powder and foundation over it, so you just don't see this brow at all, okay?
We're gonna look like aliens, you guys.
It's just making it a completely smooth surface. Yeah, you gotta do a lot. It gotta be slicked down. That a lot of people use when they're doing like costume makeup, so they could just draw on a whole other face. So we'll see how we look after this.
Oh my goodness, this is so weird.
So I'm going to take some translucent powder, and this is the powder that's very white from the last video, but I'm going to put other things over it so it won't show up. I'm putting the powder over it so that it's just not as tacky.
So guys, the 1920s, it's an important and influential era because people had just come back home from World War I. So soldiers were just coming home and trying to figure out how they can return to normalcy. But a lot of them experienced something called post-traumatic stress because of the war. Because up to this point in history, there had never been a war that was so gruesome and so drawn out. And actually going into the World War I, people just thought it would be a quick little war and it'd be over. So the soldiers that came back had to struggle a lot with post-traumatic stress and finding their way back into society. And similar to that, the women actually had a hard time finding their way back into society. No, they didn't have to go to war, but when the men were away, they all took jobs in factories and they became the lead workforce. And what was expected of them was to just go back to like taking care of the houses and stuff. And after getting a taste of freedom and showing the world that they could in fact do the same job that men could do, they had a hard time going back and just going back to their roles in the house. So that's where you get a lot of people starting to persevere and want to change the way that their society lives. So societal standards were really changed in this era. Women wanted to be treated differently, they wanted to behave differently, and they're some of the first female activists because they really broke the mold of what was standard for that time. All right, are you done with powder? Okay.
So as you can see, I'm doing a pretty good job of hiding my eyebrow, okay? It is disappearing, and what I'm doing now is I'm using a very thick concealer that is similar to my skin color. I still got layers and layers to go, but I'm doing this so I can hide my eyebrows as much as possible. So when I draw the new one over, it's disguised, okay? I might not be absolutely perfect at this, but we're going to do it anyway.
This is the first time we've ever tried this, you guys.
Yes.
So bear with us.
So this is a little crazy. So what I want to speak to you guys about today was African American standards of beauty in the 1920s. Because as you all know from our country's history, it's a little bit different. So the African Americans in this time, they came up to the northern states from the southern states, and that was called the Great Migration. The reason why they came up here was to just find better opportunities, and so they'd be treated a little bit more fairly, even though segregation laws did exist. So segregation is basically the separation of people based on their race, which we all know is pretty unfair. But they made the best of it. During the 1920s, that's when the Harlem Renaissance happened here in New York, in Harlem, and people had a wonderful time. A lot of black musicians, artists, poets, they all got together and they were all able to do a lot of cool things, as well as have very lavish parties with people of all different races. So everybody was kind of coming together during this time. So back then there was a woman named Madam C.J. Walker who was one of the main people that produced beauty products for African American women. So she was a business mogul and she was the first woman to be a millionaire in our country, period. So she was a self-made millionaire and she was able to really help out a lot of women that were African American with their hair because there were not many products for them. So she made relaxer, and she had hot tools, things they could use to straighten their hair. So hair being straightened was really the desired look. They wouldn't have hair like mine right now. They would have been straightening their hair with chemicals and with hot tools.
The 1920s was a time of flappers. It was a time of crime, and it was a time of big lavish parties. It was a time of ragtime, like Miss H was talking about the Harlem Renaissance, like ragtime became really popular, and dressing up in a different way became really popular. So guys, a flapper is a woman who is intent. She is intent on breaking societal standards and breaking the mold. So as I mentioned before, flappers were some of the first female activists. Okay, because they broke that mold and what women should look like and how they should behave. The behavior is an important part as well. Traditionally, before this time, women wouldn't go out in society unless they were accompanied by a suitor or a guardian. They were breaking the mold of what they should do and what they should behave, and they were known for wearing drop waist gowns that had tassels on the end. They'd wear feathers in their hair. And some of them even began wearing pants, which was like a huge, huge deal and a big no-no for society at that time.
If you try this at home, which I encourage, because it's going to be a lot of fun, especially if you're like in the house. If you try this at home, just remember to try to glue your brows down really good before you start putting product over it. It's a lot of fun.
Know the definition of perseverance. It's already been mentioned, but the definition of perseverance is doing something even though it's difficult in order to achieve a successful outcome. So, and it might take time. You know, actually we're persevering right now to get these eyebrows looking like...
This is Perseverance 101.
Yeah.
And people in the 1920s, women and black people, they were persevering through all of the adversity to live their best lives, basically, to do what it was they wanted to do and what they were passionate about, because they weren't able to do it before.
And guys, I actually think that you should realize that gentlemen were also persevering. At the time, mental health wasn't really super important, and if you had a bad mental health, it was generally associated with women. So for gentlemen to come home from war and experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress, it was frowned upon for them to show any kind of weakness and any kind of struggle that they were having, which we of course know is not true. Like, if you have something going on, you should definitely be open to speaking about it. Okay, we are all over the place.
Can I see your setting spreadsheet? I'm taking some foundation
This is a
now.
look.
I'm putting it on my palette because I don't want to get too messy. And then I'm going to start putting it on my face. I'm using more foundation than what I usually would because of how crazy my brows look.
So guys, also something interesting about the Roaring 20s is when they wore their heavy red lipstick, they drew it on almost to look like a doll. So sometimes they like concealed the edges of their mouth and like drew it out. So we might do that technique a little bit later as well. I might try it. So guys, I've started working on my smoky eye. Right now I'm just packing some of this purpley black color into the outer corner, and I'm actually going to pack some into the inner corner as well, and I'm going to kind of create a halo effect. But first, before I even start blending, I'm just packing. I often felt like makeup in the Roaring 20s, like when I look at pictures, was also like kind of messy on the eyes.
Yeah.
It wasn't done perfectly.
Should I come to school like this? Scary guys. So now I'm taking this brow pencil, and I think that I'm going to draw my brows first. And in the 1920s, they did very thin pencil in brows. So we'll insert a picture here so you can see it, how they look. So I'm going to do my brows first just so I know where my eyeshadow is going.
Are you using pencil or like liquid?
I'm using a pencil. As you'll see in the pictures, the brows were pretty much like this. They didn't have a really defined arc in them like we do today. They didn't have a lot of shape. They were just literally like a half moon slapped on. When I put eyeshadow on, it'll look a little less insane.
Well, I don't know about that, guys. I've got eyeshadow on. It still looks a little bit insane.
That's a little crazy. That's okay though. This is the video. This is what it's about. We're persevering through it.
Guys, I'm gonna get going on the lips. So I said before that they drew on their lips as well, and they started to kind of conceal their lips. So I'm actually putting concealer over my lips, and it feels very weird to be doing this, but that's a really different style than what we have now. People like the big, voluptuous lips. It's what's trendy. And I'm going to erase my lips essentially and turn myself into an even crazier looking ghost. Okay. So I'm just going to start right here and do my crown of my lips. And I'm going to kind of bring it over and more like rounded than my lips actually are. So guys, I'm bringing the liner out past my lips again to look like it's painted on like a doll. And it looks kind of scary right now. Everything was really dark and moody and smoky and mysterious. right? Like that was really the look that they were going for.
Put on more blush than I would recommend, and
You put on more blush than you recommend.
yeah.
I mean, I'm done.
So I look like a witch, but we persevered. We did this for the purpose of showing you how people lived and how they did their makeup back then, because even though we might look a little weird to you, it was the reality back then.
We look a lot weird. We look very, very crazy, and we're obviously not experts in doing makeup from the 1920s, but we tried our best, and that's the most important thing. And we had fun doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We tried a new technique. We got some laughs. It was all good.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Later, guys. Hope you learned something. There'll be a quiz for you to do. So please pay attention to all of the vocabulary words that we have. They came up big in the video. Bye.
Bye.
Laughing at him and the fact that I look psycho.
I look like I'd kill you.
I can't breathe.
Stop it.
I'm so sorry. Obviously, fast forward.
Persevere through.
I can't persevere through the funny.